Good afternoon, everyone. It is Sunday, March the 7th, 2021. It is currently 3:03 p.m. Central Time, and I'm coming to you live from Victory Baptist Church, located right here in Ovalo, Texas. And I don't know how your day has been going. I don't know. Now, I know some of you won't listen. You're not listening to me live right now. Some of you will listen to me who knows when. I don't know how your day is going whenever you hear this, whatever time it may be, wherever you may be. I don't know how things are going for you. Today did not get off to a very good start. Usually, we started back to actual live in-person services, right? And before that, my schedule was very simple on a Sunday. Since I was coming here and I was going to be here by myself, I'd get up around 5:30 in the morning, try to get to the church around 6:30 in the morning, and just start live broadcasting, right? And then at 10 o'clock, there's no people would arrive. Since no people were arriving, then at 10 o'clock, I would do a Sunday school lesson, then 11 o'clock, the sermon, and then I would go home, try to be back here between 2:30 and 3, do live broadcasting until whenever I was done, and then go home. But now that people are showing up, things are a little different. So I decided to come here. I originally thought about coming here earlier and trying to live broadcast, but some things got messed up to kind of change that plan. And then an opportunity an opportunity presented itself that I could go ahead and come here a little earlier than I had planned. So I got here at 9 a.m. So that gave me about 30 minutes. 30 minutes I could do a live broadcast. And guess what happened? I got out of the car, walked to the front door of the church, and realized, oh yeah, I need the key. The key was sitting at my house, 20 miles away, 25 miles away. And so I sat in the parking lot from 9 a.m. until someone arrived with a key, which was around, 9:55 a.m., and then rushed in and did Sunday school in the morning worship service. So that was really irritating because if you know me, I hate wasting time. So I tried to make the most of my time while I was sitting in the parking lot, but it's not really the way I wanted things to go, all right? But here I am this afternoon. Yes, we're having an in-person service this evening, so I have a few hours before people arrive. And I thought I would come back out here, turn on the microphone, and try to get as many live broadcasts done as possible. Hopefully, if you're listening to me live, welcome. As always, you can use the chat function there on the Spreaker app, and you can say hello, you can ask questions, you can offer comments. If you would like to be a part of the live broadcast, it's that simple. Just hop on the chat function. It's right there on the Spreaker app. It's absolutely free. Just hit the little chat icon, and whatever you want to say, good, bad, you can say it. All right, it shows up right here on my screen, and I'll be more than happy to try to interact with you and answer your questions or consider your thoughts and your perspective. All right, now what are we going to do? Well, I didn't get to do what I wanted to do this morning, and I have a lot of things I want to get to this afternoon, but you know how things work. You, the listener, you get to determine what I do. If you send me an email saying, hey, cover this, or listen to this, or give me your thoughts about this, that always moves right to the top of the list. I may have a stack of stuff that I want to get to, but you determine what I do first. And today, well, we have an email from someone who provided a link to a YouTube video. And, that's what we're going to work on this afternoon. I don't know exactly how this is going to go. I don't know. I started watching the video and immediately stopped because I like to watch it with you in real time so that my reaction and my review is in real time. It's not rehearsed. But it's like, I think the video is 6 minutes and 43 seconds long. Now you're going to hear the audio. Obviously, you're not going to see the video, but it's about 6 minutes and 43 seconds long. And so that's not a lot of time. So I don't know. Hopefully something is good that is going to come from all of this. Hopefully something positive. Here is the email that I received. It says, is this, at the very top of the email is a link to a YouTube video. And underneath it says, is this the Christian version of eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die? Now, that's interesting. He's got a link to a video that clearly is obviously seems to claim to be Christian, and this person is asking, hey, is this video, does this present the Christian version of eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die? There's a lot here that seems incoherent to me, but what is the Christian view on life supposed to be? Now, that is what got my attention with the email. That's a profound question. It would be interesting to go from church to church to church, just stand outside a church, and when Christians, get out of their car or they come walking out of the building, say, ma'am, sir, do you have a second? I have a question for you. What is the Christian view of life? What should the Christian view of life be? What should be the Christian perspective on life? What is it? What is the Christian view of life? And it would be interesting to take what Christians would say and then compare it with people. Do you claim to be a Christian? No. Okay, could you tell me, what is your view of life? And see how different it is. Have you ever thought about it? Have you ever stopped to write down, as a Christian, what is your view of life? What is your perspective on life? What is it? What is truly a distinctive Christian view of life? Now, you may already have your ideas. You may be yelling at your mobile device going, it's easy. It's obviously, and you're saying whatever it may be. I know what some answers could be. I know what some answers could be. I may have to ask the members of my church. I think I know what the members of my church would say. I'm almost positive I know what all the members of Victory Baptist Church would say. I can almost guarantee it. I could be wrong, but I have a strong idea that I think I know what it is. So that question right there got me. So what is the Christian view of life? What is it supposed to be? Were Christians in the past wrong for bringing medicine and hospitals to the sick and less fortunate? I've actually heard something like this in my small group before the pandemic, where half the guys in the group wanted to be dead because it would be better, but they had kids to raise, so they had that obligation still. What is your view on this video? How can we possibly be pro-life if this video is the truth? Enjoying your podcast. All right, so it seems what this person wants me to do is it wants me to deal with obviously a video that just seems ripe with controversy. It just seems like no matter what I'm going to say, I'm going to make someone mad. And you want me to do this today? We just got to 81 subscribers on YouTube. It sounds like by the time I'm done reviewing this video, we're going to be down to 43. All right, we had a major drop and then we started going back up. So we're up to 81. We're up to 81 subscribers on our YouTube channel. Yay. And our YouTube channel is just our audio podcast. But the fact that we even have 81 is pretty amazing. But yes, so and I love that last question. How can we possibly be pro-life if this video is truth? Now, I've said a lot of times, the Christians say a lot of things that to me contradicts their claims of being pro-life. I've pointed that out so many times, and every time I do, Christians get so upset with me. But look, if you claim to be pro-life, you've got to demonstrate pro-life has to be more than just anti-abortion. Pro-life has to be more than anti-abortion. I think pro-life especially from a Christian perspective, meaning that we view life from a Christian perspective. But what is that perspective on life? Not just the life of a human being, but just life in general. What is that Christian perspective? Well, before I even try to articulate it, I don't even know if I'm going to try in this episode, we're going to take a minute 6 minutes and 43 seconds to start. Well, it's probably going to be more than 6 minutes and 43 seconds. I don't know the correct way to say this. We have a 6 minute and 43 minute video clip that we're going to listen to the audio to, and I'm going to be reviewing it. So that means this could take forever, but we're going to go through it. I'm going to try not to interrupt it too much, but just remember a couple of things. I have no idea where this is going. I have no idea what to expect. So this is not rehearsed. So I may hit pause and say something, and then 3 seconds later in the video, they don't go the direction I thought they were going to go. So sometimes I've got to think about when do I interrupt here and when do I not interrupt, because I need to let them try to finish their thought. But we'll work through this and we'll see what happens. So are you ready? Here we go. It's called Life. This is from, let me see here. the Theopolis Institute. I'm betting this is Greek Orthodox. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But I bet you this is Greek Orthodox. I could be wrong, but I think that I'm right. But let's take a look at this. This was published on March the 3rd, 2021. It already has 6,663 views, 312 thumbs up, 12 thumbs down, if that means anything to you. We look, they've got far more views than we would ever have. Now, they actually have video here. And obviously, we've never had 312 thumbs up. And trust me, never. We may have had 312 thumbs down, but never 312 thumbs up. So from a human perspective, they're doing something right. But let's see what this has to say in regards to the subject of life. Are you ready? Here we go.
How lonely sits the city that was once so full of people. Lamentations 1. Then I will eliminate from the cities of Judah and from the streets of Jerusalem, says the Lord, the voice of joy and the voice of gladness, the voice of the groom and the voice of the bride, for the land will become a site of ruins. Jeremiah 7. Babylon, the great city, is cast down with violence and will never be found again. And the voice of harpists, musicians, flute players, and trumpeters will never be heard in you again. And no craftsman of any craft will ever be found in you again. And the voice of the mill will never be heard in you again. And the light of the lamp will never shine in you again. And the voice of the groom and bride will never be heard in you again. Revelation 18. Not so long ago, we had to imagine these scenes of apocalyptic silence. But no longer. We've lived them. Our streets.
Okay, now a couple of things here. He's pulling from some scriptures: Lamentation, Jeremiah, Revelation. Lamentations, Jeremiah, dealing with specific times of judgment upon Israel, Babylonian captivity. Then Revelation, you've got apocalyptic judgment. Now, depending on your eschatology, you could go all day on discussing that. So these are very specific situations that he's referring to. And now he's saying that we, I guess, in recent times, have experienced the same kind of apocalyptic silence. Now, we got to be very careful there, because you're comparing what we've gone through. I guess he's referring to what we've gone through COVID as apocalyptic silence, and comparing that to what happened when they went into Babylonian captivity, what happened, what's going on in Revelation 18. I mean, I'm already getting a little worried there. I mean, okay, obviously a lot of bad things have happened during COVID. We could talk about how many people have died. Yes, tragic, no question. Apocalyptic silence, that's kind of, I don't know what is apocalyptic silence? What is apocalyptic silence? That a lot of things were shut down, so we experienced silence. I think there was still plenty of noise going on. People were doing a lot of communicating and a lot of talking and a lot of yelling and a lot of debating. People were talking via Zoom, Facebook Live, podcast. I mean, there was a lot of communication going on, but okay. But apocalyptic silence, that's interesting. Let's just see where he's going to go here with this.
Have been emptied, restaurants closed, parks and playgrounds sealed off with police tape, weddings and funerals reduced or canceled, concert halls and museums vacant. For many, Thanksgiving and Christmas never happened. For months, most churches stopped meeting, and some still haven't fully opened. We've operated by one great commandment: thou shalt not feast. Incredibly, none of this happened because of an invasion or military defeat. We did it to ourselves, voluntarily. Civilizations are soundscapes filled with the clatter of work, laments for the dead, the laughter of weddings. We shut down civilization. We silenced ourselves. We had to, many will answer. We had to shut everything down to preserve life. There is no wealth but life. And if we have to lose everything to survive, it's worth it. Put to the side for the moment the bitterly disputed questions about the virulence of the pandemic. The effort to preserve life by prohibiting the living of it doesn't work.
Okay, a couple of things here. So he says, putting aside the question of basically how severe the pandemic was, let's just remember over 500,000 people dead in the United States of America. I think over 2 million dead globally. I mean, you can call into question all day, well, you know, how serious it really was. We still have a whole lot of people who died. And he seems to be arguing that by silencing ourselves and shutting things down in order to preserve life really is an attack upon life itself. It's really going after life itself. Like we almost ended in a sense, we kind of stopped living in order to preserve life. And he seems to be calling that into question. He seems to be saying that that's not the correct way. I'm going to back that up just a little because again, this only like 6 minutes long. So I mean, it's hard. You don't want to be super critical, but I mean, we got to try to critique this to the best of our ability and try to figure out, is this consistent with a Christian biblical view on life, or is he offering something counter to that? Or is he offering a counterfeit view of life for Christians? In other words, doing this supposedly, possibly in the name of Christianity, possibly, I can't say for sure, I'd have to do some research on this group. He's offering a view of life that's actually a counterfeit view of life from a truly biblical and Christian view of life. That's what we're going to have to figure out. So let's back this up just a little bit. Definitely doesn't seem to be in agreement with the things that have been done in order to try to preserve life. All right, okay, here we go.
Put to the side for the moment the bitterly disputed questions about the virulence of the pandemic. The effort to preserve life by prohibiting the living of it doesn't work. It can't work. It would work if we were mere biological machines who need nothing but air, food, water, sewage, and shelter. It would work if men and women were nothing but detached shards of humanity who can flourish in isolation, if communion were an optional extra. It would work if life were nothing more than food, and the body no more than clothing. It would work if we could save our life by merely preserving it. But that's not how life works. That's not the real world. And when we try to force life into that mold, it backfires. We sacrificed all the social and cultural activities that lend beauty and richness to life, things that make life more than bare biological survival. We sacrificed life to preserve life.
Okay, now he's making a very big assertion that we basically stopped life in order to try to preserve it. We basically stopped life. We stopped all of these things, but did we truly stop all of these things? Millions of people were still going to work. Millions of people were still communicating with people. No, maybe not the same way, but a lot of people were doing a lot of things to be creative in the middle of the pandemic. Instead of just saying, hey, in order, it's either or. Preserve life, stop living. Or don't do anything to preserve life so that you can live. This is creating a very either or dynamic, right? Hey, your options are this. To preserve life, you got to stop everything. Stop everything. Everything comes to a stop. Now, lots of things did come to a stop. Absolutely. But a lot of things didn't come to this. For example, I'll just use this as an example. Everyone knows you can condemn me all day, say I'm worldly, whatever. But just full transparency, being honest with you, everyone knows that I am a gigantic professional wrestling fan. Love the storytelling in wrestling, love the story arcs, character development, love it all. Okay, love it all. Whatever you may think about it, I love it. I could sit down and break down the storyline in ring, out of ring. We could talk about it all day. Okay. Now, in January of 2020, I was in Houston, Texas for the Royal Rumble with 60,000 people, Minute Maid Park, right? It was amazing. It was awesome. It was a great experience, okay? And after that, everything, it wasn't long after that, everything began to shut down, and that stopped going to any in-person wrestling events. I couldn't go to any more in-person wrestling events, and I missed it greatly. But did my life stop? No. Did professional wrestling stop? Absolutely not. It did not stop. Every week, professional wrestling has continued live on the air every week. Is there people in the audience? No, but they still found safety protocols, and those wrestlers are there still telling stories. They've used different ways to tell those stories, but the stories have been there. Musicians all over the country were not able to hold, concerts, but they went online, and you could pay $5, $7 and watch them perform, songs from their new album or whatever. Musicians were doing things. There were people doing all kinds of things to still live life. It wasn't like, here's your option. All it did was change the way we lived life. People still had to go to work. Now, they had to wear a mask, and they had to do different social protocols. They were still going to work. People were still working in restaurants, delivering food to your door. There were things changing. A lot of people were having meals over Zoom. I'm not saying it's the same, but to draw this, hey, here's your choice. Preserve life, and then you end life. Basically, if you preserve life, you're ending life. So what you need to do is not attempt to preserve life so that we can live life. But if you're not trying to preserve life to live life, are you not then putting people's lives at risk? I just think it's a weird dynamic that's being created here, that we had two choices. Just live life, because any attempt to preserve it was by the fact that they passed seatbelt laws, that everyone has to get in their car and wear a seatbelt, did that somehow take away my living? Hey, I'm not really able to live. I'm not really able to experience life. There's nothing better and speed limit signs. I mean, let's remove speed limit signs and let's remove seatbelt laws. I want to be able to go down the highway doing 140 miles an hour, no seatbelt. I mean, why even have doors? Why even have any? I mean, in some places, your car has to be inspected each year, and if it doesn't meet a certain requirement, you can't drive it. Why? Let me live my life. Is any attempt to put safety measures there in order to preserve life, does that actually end life? Does it actually stop you from living? There were a lot of things in 2020 that were tragic and horrible. There's no question about it. There's lots of things that happened, but there's plenty of times in life where safety measures are enacted in order to preserve life. Mandatory evacuation notices, all kinds of things. Boil water notices. Wait, in the middle of a drought, can't water your yard. You can only take this many showers. We got to preserve water. We're going to run out of water. There's lots of times things are enacted in order to save and preserve life. Does that mean you're ending life? Are you telling me there still can't be purpose and meaning and beauty, even though that you're living in a difficult circumstance? Are you telling me at times in World War II, when cities were put under curfews because of air raids and you had to go to the shelter, that somehow, they're trying to preserve life, they're ending life, people should just be able to wander wherever they want, and if they get killed, they get killed. Is that a Christian view of life? So he's creating a weird dynamic here. It's almost an either or. And I don't think it's either or. There were lots of beautiful things and lots of things people did to still try to engage in life. Yes. Was it different? Yes. Was it unfortunate? Yes. Was it tragic? Yes. But that's the very nature of living during a very difficult and tragic situation. Now, yes, of course, if you don't believe that it's real, and if you go back to, some conspiratorial thinking, believing it's not real, it's all hype, it's all fake, well, then obviously you believe it's some grand scheme to take away your life, obviously. But if we don't go down that path, then really steps to preserve life, is it really taking away life? And what do you do if you live life with no steps to try to preserve it and protect it? What is that? All right, so I'm going to back this up just a little bit again, because again, it's just a weird dynamic that he seems to be presenting here. All right, we'll go back. Here we go.
When when we try to force life into that mold, it backfires. We sacrificed all the social and cultural activities that lend beauty and richness to life, things that make life more than bare biological survival. We sacrificed life to preserve life. In the name of love, we canceled love. But in our frenetic necrophobia, we flee death, avoiding contact with others, locking ourselves in our home, obsessively washing our hands, avoiding public places and gatherings, all for the sake of survival. But a life without human touch, a life in which we never venture, a life without risk, is no life at all but a living death. To preserve bare life at all costs is suicide. To elevate bare life as the supreme value, we have to make the supreme sacrifice of life itself. And so we flee from death and find ourselves rushing to death's embrace.
So to preserve life, to live, we have to sacrifice life. In other words, we can't run around being worried about preserving life. We can't be running around worried about survival, because if we do that, we end up stop living. So what we need to do is just accept the risk and live our lives. Okay, how far, now let's just take this to a logical, how far do you take this? How far do you take this? Hey, don't worry. Just as the emailer said, eat, drink, be merry, because tomorrow you die. Just don't take any precautions. Don't take anything. Don't do anything. Don't worry about anything. Just do whatever you. No seatbelt laws, no speed limit laws, no laws at all. I mean, forget fire codes, forget any. I mean, there are millions of things around you every day that are designed to do one thing: to keep you safe and preserve you. There are so many laws enacted. How many of these do we get away from? It's just so weird that we have this conversation related to COVID, but I did not see this same conversation related to 9/11. 9/11, people are like, do whatever you got to do. You Patriot Act, take away civil liberties, do whatever you got to do. Launch a war, do whatever you've got to do. Hey, go into Iraq. Iraq really had nothing to do with 9/11, but that's okay. They could possibly have weapons of mass destruction, which could hurt us. Go invade them. Do this, do that. Well, wait a minute. Wait. Why are we doing all of these things? In order to keep us safe? It just seems like this, that when you create this either or dynamic, you're giving people no choice. One of the comments under the video says, indeed, life was put on the altar in the name of life. So in other words, they're saying we put life on the altar. We sacrifice life in order to preserve life. And I just don't think that we put life on the altar and killed it. I just think, no, it was radically altered, but people were still living their lives. There were some things that, yes, were horribly missed, things that were I'm not denying that in any way, shape, or form, but that do we reduce life to just, hey, you're not really living. You're not really living unless you can go to a restaurant, unless you can go to a concert, unless you can go to a wrestling event, unless you can go to a sporting event, unless you can do certain things, then you're not really living life. So we define life now by the activities we engage in, by how many people we touch. That's how we define life. It seems that his view of life is, hey, look, there was this tragic situation and they took away our life. Instead of, it seems from a Christian perspective, it'd be like we were in the middle of a tragic situation. What could we do to minister, to serve, to help? What could we do to serve God? What could we do to glorify God in the midst of a pandemic? What could we do? But it seems that to me, the whole thing about COVID is it revealed that everyone was only concerned with themselves. You're telling me I can't do that? Well, I'm not living my life. You're taking away my life. I want my rights, our rights, me. And all we could worry about is ourselves and not worry about anybody else and people dying and people getting sick and all of the things that were happening around us. We all seem to be preoccupied with ourselves, that life is defined by me doing what I want to do. And that doesn't appear to be the Christian perspective. The Christian perspective is, I lay down my rights for the good of other people. I put other people before me. That seems to be that. But my purpose in life is to glorify God. And I glorify God by serving him and serving others. Love God, love others. This seems like a very self-centered perspective. I know he's using language to make it other people perspective, but it's about life. We give up life if we can't do the things we want to do. If we can't live the life the way we define living that life, then it's not life. But we were still breathing. We were still feeling. We were still able to communicate. I've said it 1,000 times. Everyone was like, our church can't meet. We can't do anything. Well, what can we do? I can't go to church. And all I know is there were things we could not do, but I know that I came to this very building, right here to this very chair, and I sat in this chair hour after hour after hour after hour after hour and done over and produced over 900 episodes of a podcast talking to people around the world, communicating with people, sharing thoughts, feelings, stories, theology, doctrine, Bible, frustrations, ups, downs. And then people communicated with me via email or hopping into the chat during a live broadcast. Now, is that life the way we want it? Would I prefer to have people in this building? Yes, I would have. But it doesn't mean that life stopped. It didn't mean that we still weren't called as Christians to pursue serving God, glorifying God, and serving others. It's just a weird dynamic that I think the video is presenting. I'm going to back this up one more time. I apologize, but I just want us to hear this whole thought. I'm going to go a little further back, okay? Here we go.
Work if we could save our life by merely preserving it. But that's not how life works. That's not the real world. And when we try to force life into that mold, it backfires. We sacrificed all the social and cultural activities that lend beauty and richness to life. Things that make life more than bare biological survival. We sacrificed life to preserve life. In the name of love, we canceled love. But in our frenetic necrophobia, we flee death.
In the name of love, we canceled love? Who canceled love? Who? I didn't get that memo. Hey, because COVID-19 is currently spreading, I want everyone to cancel love. Stop loving people. Stop loving people, okay? You can't love anyone. Or maybe we loved people in a different way, okay? Like there's different, I mean, is there only one way to love? The only way I can love someone is to run up and touch their face with my hand and breathe on them and say, come here, get close. I love you. Like, no, or could I love you by saying, hey, you stay there, I'll stay here. Okay. Is there anything you need? Or communicating with you different way. Like, this seems so either or. Hey, here's your two options. See, that option doesn't make any sense. This option is the other. This seems to be built on a logical fallacy. Look up logical fallacies and see if you can see where this fits in. I think you can probably hear where I'm going with this. All right. So it just seems like a lot of people presented this whole subject of COVID this way. It was only one way or the other way. And it's like, maybe it's a very complicated thing here, right? We have a pandemic. It's a new coronavirus, a novel coronavirus, something new. There was a lot of things to figure out. What should we do? What shouldn't we do? Well, we should do this. Can you go and look and say, well, maybe they should have had targeted lockdowns. I mean, you can criticize all day on what should be done. And then you talk to people who worked in the medical world, and they were, I mean, some of them, it sounds like they came out of a war zone, the things they experienced. Well, what about them? What about them? What about the people who got sick and died? What about the families who talk about the family members they lost because of COVID? What about their pain? What about their tragedy? It's not just you. It's not just, well, I didn't get to go to a concert and I didn't get to go here, and they closed restaurants and there was silence. It was apocalyptic silence everywhere, and there was just no noise and there was no sound while people were dying. Real people died. Now you can try to play down the number, but look at those family members who really lost someone. Now, if you want to go all conspiratorial, there's no point in having a conversation. There's got to be more than just this very it just seems like, hey, life isn't worth living unless I get to live life my way. And so I'm willing to accept the risk, so you should be willing to accept the risk. Well, if you're willing to accept the risk and you get COVID and you don't believe there should be any restrictions because that takes away you quote unquote living, and then you have taken the risk, you assume the risk, you get the virus, you're either pre-symptomatic or asymptomatic, you don't know you have it, and then you spread it to someone else who maybe really don't want to take that risk, and then they get sick and die. Well, hey, you know what? That's the risk, because we don't want to sacrifice life on the altar for life. We don't want to give up life for life. We don't want to cancel love. It's just a really weird dynamic here. Well, let's continue.
Avoiding contact with others, locking ourselves in our home, obsessively washing our hands, avoiding public places and gatherings, all for the sake of survival. But a life without human touch, a life in which we never venture, a life without risk, is no life at all but a living death. To preserve bare life at all costs is suicide. To elevate bare life as the supreme value, we have to make the supreme sacrifice of life itself. And so we flee from death and find ourselves rushing to death's embrace, strangely comforted. Our necrophobia becomes necrophilia. We've forgotten what life is and what a feast is for. Festivity isn't some extraneous add-on to life. A feast is the effective sign of life, the site where life is lived, life in communion with God and with one another, life as shared joy, a sharing of food and drink that is also a sharing of ourselves with one another. Food exists to be saturated with personal communion, to carry in itself the communication of one person to another. And so we taste the goodness of one another through the goodness of these creatures of food and drink. What we're doing this evening is an act of cheery defiance. We defy the silence and dare to share together the voice of the harpists and flautists and trumpeters and pianists, the voice of the bridegroom and the voice of the bride, the voice of singers, the voice of laughter over a shared table. Here tonight, together, we form a circle of sound, light, and life. Here, at least, a city lives. We're not here to defy this or that petty ordinance. We're here in the name and power of the risen Lord Jesus to defy death, including the living death of the silent city. The world is food, a banquet of sights, sounds, aromas, tastes, textures, a table spread by our Creator for our mutual and common delight. This, what we're doing here now, this is life. So welcome to the feast. Welcome back to life. Eat, drink, laugh, talk, shout, sing, rejoice. Live.
Wow, I don't even know what to do with this. I mean, this is always the thing with a live, when I'm doing this live, there's no time to prepare for this. I mean, that's the thing about doing this. I'm listening to this with you, trying to process this. Basically, I think if we summarize what he's saying is, look, live your life and don't worry about the risk. Just live life. Even in the middle of a pandemic, just live your life. Don't stop. And a pandemic, you would hope, we hoped, would not obviously have lasted as long as it has, but it's possible. Maybe that's even a foolish thing to say. Go back and look at some of the other pandemics. Many of them lasted far longer than a year. Or why were we expecting it to be done in 6 months? Why were we for 3 months, I'm good to go. But after 3 months, this pandemic better be gone. Well, name a pandemic in history that works that way. A severe pandemic, they usually last, maybe I'd have to go back and look at all of them, but I think the Spanish flu, wasn't it 2 years? It's if we go to the Black Death, bubonic plague, those were multiple years, and then it came back, especially during Luther's time when it came back and it was spreading through Wittenberg. So, I mean, first of all, I don't know why we expected it to be a short-term thing, but in a short-term pandemic, what he seems to be implying is that we need to live life. We need to live life. We need to embrace life. We need to eat, drink, shout, be merry. Because I guess, in a roundabout way, I think the emailer really hit it. This is the Christian version of eat, drink, because tomorrow we're going to die. Well, okay, well, what about life? Like, see, So we have there's no responsibility to do what we can to preserve life. We have no responsibility to try to preserve it, try to save it, try to look out for it, to do whatever we can to keep others safe. We have no responsibility at all. So how far do you take this? Why are there so many laws and things put in place? Why did they pass smoking bans? Why did they ban smoking in so many buildings, public buildings? Why? Because they realized smoking was causing cancer and killing people. So they said, look, my freedom to smoke, your freedom to smoke does not trump my freedom to not want cancer, right? Your freedom to smoke should not trump my freedom to breathe. So they passed. So, that was wrong. Why did they do that? Lift all restrictions on smoking. Bring back all the cigarettes. Let's just smoke. Let's just anywhere you want. Well, they realized that was a negative thing. So, life is about, and just know how he reduced life. Life is about eating. Life is about being around people. Life is about activity. Life is about eating, drinking, and being merry. That's what he basically reduced life to. Eating, drinking, and marrying. Are those aspects of living? Yes. Are they a part of living? Yes. But there seems to be, I would think, that there is a biblical idea that life has its twists and turns, and sometimes something is needful for a season. Something is needful for a season in order to show love, in order to preserve life, in order to be pro-life. Something is needful for a season where I may give up some of those things that may bring me immense pleasure, but that doesn't mean I stop living. I can still commune with God. I can still pray to God, study his word, feast on his word. And there were still ways to try to have interaction with people. There were still places to go. There were still things happening. You just had to take certain precautions. What I've seen is that the people don't even want to take precautions. I mean, even at times during the height of the pandemic, there were still, in many cases, college football games where there were crowds in the stand. It was limited, but there were still people there. There were still things going on. There were all kinds of creative ideas to say, hey, we're going to have this. Now we can only have, 50 people, but you could go. He's making it sound like that it was just like the end of everything, and that's just not accurate. Things changed, but life, the Christian meaning of life can't be defined by the things we do. The Christian meaning of life is that we understand that our life comes to us from God. We were created by him. We were created for him. So true meaning, true purpose in life, true joy in life is found in serving and glorifying him. And one of the things he calls me to do and to glorify him and to serve him is how I deal with other people by showing love for them and seeing their life as valuable, seeing their life as coming from the Creator and that they have an eternal soul. He basically reduced life that here's your options. If you try to preserve it, right, by restricting it too much, you actually sacrifice it, because life really is defined by the things we do, by the activities we engage in, by the people we are around. That seems to be a very hedonistic view of life. That seems like life is about pleasure. Life is about activity. No, life is about God. Life is about serving him. God, think about this. We believe that many of the restrictions God provides are restrictions in order to, we always say this with God's laws. These laws We say this so many times about God's laws. These laws are not there to take away your fun in life. They're there to help preserve it, to protect it, to give you a greater quality of life. So even in Scripture, we're like, God restricts sexuality to us. Why would he restrict it? Why? Why? Life is about joy and pleasure and touch. Why does he restrict it? He restrict it. We say because that's where we can have the greater fulfillment, and it protects us from, all the ramifications of an immoral lifestyle, sexually transmitted disease. It protects us. Why does he prohibit us from getting drunk and warns us about that being deceived by wine is foolishness? Why would he want to prohibit how much we drink? Because, abuse of alcohol can hurt and destroy your life. There are rules in the Bible to try to preserve and protect you. Why is that? Why are there rules against killing? Why is there rules against stealing? Why is there rules against coveting? Why? Because rules designed to protect and preserve life are things to show that life has inherent value and that's worth to be protected. Now, can you go? I don't even know if the Bible would even go this direction. Can you have too many restrictions on life till you stop until you're no longer living? Now, I'm not talking from a political standpoint. You can look at it from a political standpoint and go, well, these laws violate our Constitution, and you can have that constitutional fight, and you can go find constitutional scholars, and you can argue that. But we're looking at it from a Christian perspective. The Christian perspective doesn't seem to say anything about that. It seems to talk about giving up my rights. Like, for example, if eating meat causes someone to stumble, I'm supposed to abstain from eating meat. Right? That's literally how Paul dealt with the problems in the church of Corinth. Well, why? Why would I give that up? Because it's not about my pleasure, my joy. It's about other people. Well, if we're in the middle of a pandemic and there are people worried about getting sick and they're looking to the church and we're like, you know what? We're not going to sacrifice our life to preserve life. We're not going to do that. We're not going to live in fear. Now, again, many of the Christians who run around saying this stuff are the same Christians who believe you need 3 guns in order to preserve life. Well, why do you need guns? Why? Well, I got to preserve life. Well, why do you got to preserve life? Life lived without risk is not living. So live, be risky. Don't have a gun. Well, no, I got to have a gun. I got to protect my family. Well, why do you got to protect your family? Why? You don't want any rules to protect anyone. Why? Why even have a police? Let's defund the police. Why do we need the police to try to preserve life? Come on. Living life without risk is not really living. Now, anytime I say that, people say you're going to the absurd, but I'm just saying when you establish a logical way of thinking, you've got to take that way of thinking to its logical conclusion. And if the logical conclusion leads you into a land of absurdity, you may want to go back and go, wait a minute, I don't know if that's the direction I want to go. Now, of course, that's only 6 minutes. It sounds like what they were doing is that they were getting ready to have a big in-person service where they were going to be doing singing and eating and doing all of these things. And they supposedly weren't doing it to flaunt any restrictions. No, it sounds like that they were getting ready to flaunt those restrictions and not follow those restrictions. And why? Because we're going to live life. And what is life? Eating, drinking, shouting, rejoicing, touching. That's what life is. Life is reduced there by doing things that make us feel good. I think that's a little hedonism. Give me 1 second here. I'm just going to look up something just to make sure, because I don't want to use a word that I'm using it incorrectly. It's an interesting video. To be fair, we would need a more lengthy conversation to really know exactly what the person is talking about. Hedonism. Let's see here. Hedonism is defined as the pursuit of pleasure, sensual self-indulgence. Right here in philosophy, that's the definition I was thinking. I had to look up a philosophical definition. Yes, because in my philosophy classes. Okay, so this is the direction I was going. Hedonism as a philosophy, the ethical theory that pleasure and the sense of the satisfaction of desires is the highest good and proper aim of human life. Now, he just did a video about life, and they were getting ready to live life, but I will say the Christian view of life is far different than that hedonistic definition. And hedonism, the ethical theory that pleasure in the sense of the satisfaction of desires is the highest good and proper aim of human life. The proper aim of human life is the satisfaction of desire, of pleasure, of eating, drinking, shouting, rejoicing, doing all of those things. How about for the Christian perspective, the highest end of life is to glorify God and to enjoy Him forever. My greatest satisfaction is in glorifying God. How do I glorify God? In loving Him and loving others and serving other people. And sometimes that means sacrificing my own rights for the good of others because I put others before myself. This is very basic Christianity 101 stuff. But we've now found a way to basically take hedonism, make it sound like we're doing the right thing because we need to enjoy life. We need to experience, because if we don't, we're ending life, and we're Christians and we defend life, except if it means me sacrificing something that will bring me pleasure in order to possibly keep you from getting a virus that could kill you. Now, I understand. How far do you take restricting things? I understand that. I understand that. We can argue all day about, were all these restrictions necessary? I'm not here to fight that. I'm just saying that this perspective is promoting a hedonistic perspective on life and not a Christian perspective on life. Now, we can argue all day about, did they do the right thing? History will ultimately make that determination. That's what I know. History will ultimately look back and go, they messed up. Like, it's going to be in the history books. Here's how the world handled COVID-19. What can we learn from it? And guess what? We're going to learn the things they did right. We're going to learn the things they did wrong. And you know what? I'm not shocked by that. You know why? Because every pandemic that I've ever studied, either for my job or in other settings, guess what? Here's what they did right. Here's what they did wrong. Here's what they did right. Now, we need to take from that and learn when the next time a pandemic comes along. And sometimes we learn the lessons, sometimes we don't. So I won't be surprised that there'll be things. And guess what? If they come out and say, you know what, we did this wrong, there'll be millions of people going, see, I told you. No, all you can do in the middle of dealing with a novel virus is you've got to come up with the best course of action that you can determine at that time in order to try to preserve life. And I don't understand why preserving life now is almost seen as a negative thing. Pro-life people are now the people thinking to preserve life is really the idea of sacrificing life. So to preserve life, it means to sacrifice life. So we can't take away anyone's right to eat, drink, and be merry because tomorrow we die. Very, very interesting. Well, we're going to have to come back to this subject again. This has already gone longer than I wanted, but there you have it. There you have it. That's at 52 minutes. I hope I've provided something beneficial for the person who emailed me this. Hopefully something beneficial for you as well. I think this is close. I'm going to put this in the hedonism philosophy category. I know the person who made the video would strongly deny that, but I didn't hear anything about glorifying God, loving your neighbor as yourself. I didn't hear anything about any of that. It was about life means doing, and he named all the things that we can't do, and by not doing that, then somehow we sacrifice life. So now it's time to throw out all of the restrictions and go live that life by eating and drinking, shouting, rejoicing, touching, and doing all of those things. And then we're living life. Yeah. All right. Email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. Thanks for listening. God bless.